Umbral Medical Division, Secure Room 3B. Dr. Halverson, Lead Psychiatric Officer, Umbral Medical Division 7. Post-op trauma screening. Current subject, Major Nathaniel Delacroix, Sentinel.
Sentinel sits in a steel chair in the center of the room. The place doesn't look like a doctor's office. Instead, it appears sterile and unremarkable. He appears alert, but relaxed in his standard black uniform, no helmet. His jaw is tense, eye contact direct. "Good morning, Major. How are you today?" "No complaints." "Good. Do you understand what we're doing here today?" "Psych eval. You don't have to go through all the preliminaries with me if you don't want to, Doctor. I've been through this song and dance plenty of times." "Okay. Well then, let's begin. Question 1. Can you describe your emotional state and the emotional state of your team in the aftermath of your most recent deployment?" "Stable. Mission objectives were met with minimal deviation. Morale could be better, but that's to be expected when the team was tasked with eliminating a target who they had previously been tasked with rescuing. Pulling Esme Sylvain out of that cave system was hellish. No other way to put it. So eliminating her made the whole thing feel futile." Sentinel pauses, hand coming up to rub his chin. "Not for me, though. Something about her felt dangerous from the start. One less variable is always a good thing." "Do you feel that Umbral made a mistake bringing her on in the first place?" "My opinion doesn't matter. I can see why she was valuable. That's all I can really say on the matter." "Understood. And are you having any reoccurring dreams or nightmares about your most recent deployment or past deployments?" "I usually sleep like the dead. I've experienced some insomnia, but no nightmares. At least not that I remember. And before you ask, I do go over the things I believe we could have done better as a team, or that I could have done better as a leader during my waking hours, but it isn't to the point of distraction. In the incident involving your near drowning, I've already been debriefed on this. Humor me, Major." "Fine. Any reoccurring dreams about drowning are gone. I experienced temporary hypoxia and loss of coordination. Tempest extracted me in under 90 seconds with the help of the rest of the team. They followed training protocols, and there were no lasting physical or psychological effects. I was medically cleared and deployed on the following mission." The doctor flips through his notebook pages. "It says here that the maneuver that landed you in the water could be construed as self-sacrificing. As the team leader and one of the most valuable members of the Eclipse initiative, I'm sure you can see why we'd be concerned about you being too quick to put yourself in danger like that." "I didn't intend it to be self-sacrificing. I just misjudged the structural integrity of the ship's railing." "All right, understood. Let's continue. Do you feel that your decisions while in the field have always benefited Umbral and the directives you were given?" "Every move I made served the directive, including the decisions I regret." "Do you regret certain decisions?" Sentinel shrugs one shoulder. "Of course. But even the ones I ended up regretting were made in the best interest of the initiative." "Fair enough. How would you assess your relationships with the other members of Ares?" "Functional. Professional." "Be more specific, if you don't mind." Sentinel sighs, shifting in his seat. "Aegis is distant, but it hasn't affected her work. She's dependable and cool as a medic, and just as sharp as any of the others during combat. But recent losses may have made her appear colder, but I still trust her implicitly. Hawkeye's detached, but he always has been. He's silent most of the time, but he stepped up during the Crater Station mission when we needed him. Jester copes through humor, but I'm positive you have that in your notes already. He's more serious now that he's being considered for a leadership position, which isn't a bad thing. Tempest is young, hot-headed and somewhat impulsive, but not overly so. It works in her favor in close quarters. She was cool and steady enough to pull me out of the water, so you're going to have a hard time getting me to say anything negative about her. Exo remains operational. Not sure what you want me to report there. And Raptor? Sentinel pauses, eyes narrowing slightly. What about Raptor? He's dead. The evaluation focuses on current operational readiness. In my notes, it says your team experienced a significant emotional reaction when given the news of the sergeant's death. Are you certain that reaction hasn't affected anyone on your team in the long term? We were all already evaluated about this. It was concluded that everyone was experiencing varying degrees of shock, but it was short-lived, and subsequent missions went off without a hitch. His loss was significant, but we remain operational. It would help if medical would decide whether they wanted to treat this as a serious mental health concern or just another bump in the damn road, though. Landing in the middle like they have isn't doing anyone good, and I still don't have a second in command. I understand your concern. It's being handled through structural adjustments and internal review. Sentinel laughs humorlessly. Sure it is. Okay, let's continue. Do you feel loyalty to Umbral? Without question. Elaborate. What is it that you want to hear? I'm their soldier. Umbral saved my life, and I'll spend the rest of it paying that debt. The corporation is in my blood. Simple. If you had the opportunity to walk away from this work, to be a civilian, would you take it? No. Why? Because this is who I am. There isn't another man hovering under my skin, Doctor. I'm Sentinel, before I'm Nathaniel Delacroix. Okay. Final question. What do you fear most on or off the field? The loss of my team. Beyond that, Ares losing cohesion. Thank you, Sentinel. That concludes your evaluation. You are dismissed.
Subject appears highly functioning and processes traumatic stress well. He prioritizes team structure and mission success. Sentinel remains an ideal example for Umbral leadership. Loyal, emotionally disciplined, and mentally sound. Slight frustration about post-loss protocol observed, but not concerningly so. My recommendation is that the subject is cleared for continued leadership of Ares. Sentinel remains the optimal candidate for command of his team. Clearance granted.
Hawkeye sits rigidly upright, hands resting on his knees. His face is expressionless, and his eyes do not waver from the lens. His uniform is immaculate. He's so still that the image of him could almost be mistaken for a photo and not a video recording. Good morning, Corporal. How are you today? Fine. Just fine? Hawkeye nods once. The doctor exhales slowly. Okay then, let's begin. Can you describe your emotional state in the aftermath of your most recent deployment? Normal. Could you be more specific? No. I have to insist. Fine. There was no fatigue. I was boots on the ground instead of in a sniper's nest, but performance was still optimal. The mission was a success. Nothing that you just said had anything to do with your emotional state, Corporal. I know your team spent a significant amount of time rescuing Dr. Sylvain, only to have to put her down. That's irrelevant to me. I don't assign emotions to objectives. It's work. Next question. The doctor inhales and exhales a few times slowly, warding off frustration. Understood. Moving on. Have you experienced reoccurring dreams, nightmares, or thoughts about any past deployments? No. None? No. What would you say if I told you I don't believe you? Sorry. You do understand this evaluation is mandatory, and Umbral expects you to answer fully and honestly. Which is what I'm doing, yeah. Okay. But if you get pulled into another one of these because your answers aren't considered satisfactory, don't blame me. So, next question. Do you feel your actions during the mission were justified? I followed orders. That's not what I asked. The orders are justification. I suppose that's all I'm going to get of you, Let's talk about team dynamics. How would you assess your relationships with the other members of Ares? Effective. Effective? What about the rapport between you and everyone else? Not necessary. You're making this rather difficult. Hawkeye leans forward, a slight tick appearing in his jaw. I'm here to humor Sentinel. All of my medical needs are handled outside of the rest of the team. I'm sure you can see that the clearance of most of my file is higher than you're able to access. So this is a waste of both of our time. Now, do you want me to leave? Or do you want to just write down the answers I give you so we can both get on with our days, Doctor? Believe it or not, Corporal, I'm not intimidated by you. I see plenty of your type every day. I doubt that. Are delusions of grandeur normal for you? Hawkeye stands to leave, but the doctor continues talking. Could those delusions potentially be a side effect of the cranial implant I see listed here on your file? Hawkeye freezes. It was removed. Anything implanted subcranially has the potential to cause changes in a patient's mental state. The doctor shuffles through papers. You received that implant after the death of a team member, right? Codename Cypher, it says here. The intent was for you to take over as the team's electronic warfare specialist until a replacement could be found. That's a lot of responsibility for one person, especially layered on top of the grief you must have been feeling about losing a brother in arms. Hawkeye lowers himself back into the chair, breathing shallow, but otherwise visually calm. Just ask the questions on the list. Does grief affect you differently when your position on the team forces you to spend so much time on your own, in your own head? No. Why is your breathing elevated, Hawkeye? I thought snipers were always in control of their physical responses. It's necessary to make the shot, I've been told. Tell me about your grief, Hawkeye. Over Raptor, and Cypher before him. And before all of that, your father. I only grieved the last one. Then I grew the fuck up. Well, previous notes from your teammates suggest you may have been struggling particularly with the loss of misinterpretation. It's over. Is it? Yes. There's a long pause, and when the doctor speaks again, their voice has less of the cold professionalism they've been holding on to the entire time. You know, I could help you if you'd let me. Repressing all of this is going to make you snap one day. Processing it will help your performance in this job. The job that you seem to live and breathe for. The sniper lets out a single, sarcastic bark of laughter. Yeah, I sincerely doubt it. You're horribly mistaken about what my job entails, Dr. Halverson. I hope for both our sakes you never have to find out firsthand. Is that a threat, Corporal? God, no. He drags one hand over his face, suddenly exhausted. I genuinely hope you don't. Halverson's chair squeaks as they lean back in it. Well, fine. Let's finish then. How strong is your loyalty to Umbral? Unshakable. Why? Because I know where I stand with Umbral, and because they trust me to do what needs to be done. Loyalty and trust aren't quite the same thing, Hawkeye. You know that, right? Close enough. If you had the opportunity to walk away from this work, to lead a civilian life, away from the bloodshed, the implants, the loneliness, and the grief, would you take it? No. Why, Corporal? This is what I was made for. Or what you were made into, at least. Final question. What do you fear most, on or off the field? Losing the shot. Metaphorically? No. If you mean literally missing a target, surely you miss sometimes. I don't miss. Rifle, knife, hand-to-hand, or otherwise. That's a soldier's answer, Hawkeye. I'm asking the man. It's the only answer I have. Noted. That concludes your evaluation, Hawkeye. You're dismissed.
The subject shows extreme brevity in speech, psychological distancing, and high detachment. Signs of emotional repression probably relate to past trauma, but do not currently affect functioning. The subject is notably resistant to self-reflection. There is likely ongoing internal conflict regarding grief in general. However, he avoids directly addressing the topic, and maintains enough self-control to stay operational. The evaluator advises discreetly monitoring for any future behavioral anomalies. The subject continues to be a capable and disciplined asset, consistently demonstrating exemplary performance. My recommendation is that he's cleared for continued deployment. The subject's strategic prowess outweigh any abnormalities. Clearance granted. Subject: Corporal Alicia Alvarez, Aegis.
Aegis appeared relaxed, legs crossed at the ankle. Her posture seems more like someone making a social call instead of an appointment. She's dressed differently from the rest of the team, in mint green scrubs, having been called away from training new medic recruits for the evaluation. Aegis doesn't look like a soldier at first glance, but someone with a good eye can see the way she's coiled like a loaded spring, ready to explode into action at a moment's notice. Hello, Corporal. I apologize for pulling you away from your trainees. Do you prefer Dr. Alvarez or... No. Aegis bitte. Certainly. So, let's start in the same place I did with everyone else thus far. Can you describe your state of mind after your most recent mission? Aegis laughs good-naturedly. It was a lot, but that's not exactly odd for the missions we're given. It's a toss-up whether it will be uneventful or so strange that it makes me question reality. Her tone sobers. Putting Sylvans down was rough, but I had a harder time with the lower-level scientists who were just caught in the crossfire of the fungal infection. But you aren't struggling with those deaths? She frowns, deep in thought. 9. If you had seen them, you'd understand what I did was a kindness. It's good that you understand the value of mercy. I know it can be hard. Is it difficult for you to be tasked with acting as both a soldier and a savior at the same time? She makes an amused, somewhat sad sound when she exhales. How poetically put. Would it matter if I said yes? It would matter to you. Then, yes. The Eclipse initiative used to take pity on medics and let us carry non-lethal weapons, but it was determined to be too much of a risk. So, breaking the Hippocratic Oath is just part of the job description now. She tries to add some humor to her voice, but it fails. Yes, well, it's a different sort of world here, working for Umbral. Have you had any reoccurring memories, nightmares, or dreams regarding the last mission or any others? She's quick to answer, almost too quick, like she's been practicing what to say, so she doesn't mess it up. Mostly practical ones, dosage corrections, different treatment protocols, things like that. I wouldn't classify those as nightmares or reoccurring memories. I meant intrusive dreams and thoughts, emotional or otherwise. No. The doctor shifts in their seat, and the tapping of a pen on a paper notebook can be heard. You were the last person to speak with Raptor before he died. Does that affect you in any way? There's a long silence. That isn't part of this evaluation. You haven't mentioned him once until now. How loss and other operational variables affect the team are part of the evaluation. The company wants to ascertain that the loss was non-disruptive to current team function. Okay, but why bring up the fact that I was the last one to speak with him? Notes in your file indicate that you and Sergeant Gideon worked together often. He trained you in combat when you were first assigned to the Eclipse initiative. It also states that you stabilized and ultimately saved his life once before. Successfully, that time. Fine. It bothers me. I think it bothers all of us. But his blood was literally on my hands. Is that what you want to hear? Do you believe you failed him? Yes. No. I restarted his heart and handed him off with a steady respiration and pulse. It didn't matter. There was no saving him. So yes, I failed him. Do you think your failure to save Raptor will cause you to take unnecessary, heroic measures in your role as a medic in the future? The company is concerned in cases like yours that you will prioritize the wrong things when in the field. And by wrong things, you mean my teammates over the mission objective? I didn't specify. There was another pause where neither of them speaks, but Aegis appears fixated, unblinking on the doctor, until they try to coax an answer out of her. I need to record your response to the last question, please. You can write down that I'm a professional, a soldier, and not a hero. I will act as such. Do you believe the rest of your team is equally committed to the job at hand, despite the difficulties that Ares has recently faced? There's no weak link, if that's what you're asking. We complete missions. We're the most effective, successful team in the initiative. Isn't that enough? Are you still emotionally engaged with your work? I see you don't have to answer my questions. Just the other way around, Engagement isn't a requirement for competence. That's not what I asked. I'm sure you can read between the lines. What does matter to you, Aegis? There's a pause, and a flicker of genuine sorrow crosses her face, then vanishes. Keeping my team alive, Whatever's left of it. Do you feel loyalty to Umbral? Her eyes narrow. Of course. Would you consider yourself more loyal to Umbral or the Radiant Mercy Corps? Her hands twitch where they are folded in her lap. Umbral, Dr. Halverson. My loyalty is to Umbral. The doctor's tone becomes more pointed, like a dog on a scent. Do you consider yourself more loyal to Umbral or Sentinel? Her mouth briefly opens, tongue tucked against her front teeth as if to make an S sound before it rounds, and she says, Umbral. If given the opportunity to walk away now, would you take it and return to Radiant Mercy? She tilts her head to the side as if amused, an almost condescending smile on her face. No. No, of course not. All right, Dr. Alvarez. What do you fear most, on or off the field? Being too late to help, and being the last one standing. Do you want to elaborate on that? I don't. I need to get back to work. Are we done here? Yes. Yes, we can end the session here. You're dismissed, Aegis.
The subject appears highly self-aware, but reserved in how she displays herself. She uses deflection and redirection techniques typical of medical training and trauma conditioning. Hesitation is evident when she compares her role as a medic to that of a soldier. A significant destabilizing moment occurred during the conversation about Raptor's death, but it was soon contained. This suggests ongoing emotional suppression rather than genuine resolution. The subject is conditionally cleared for continued deployment with a request for follow-up observation. I suggest that Sentinel be discreetly informed of potential psychological fatigue indicators. Aegis remains one of Umbral's most effective battlefield medics, but exhibits symptoms of long-term stress deterioration masked by professional competence. Clearance granted. Subject Corporal Felix Watson, Jester.
Jester approaches the chair and turns it around, sitting with his arms folded on the back and legs stretched out. He's in uniform, lacking the personalized patches he had worn for so long. Even with everything pressed and immaculate, there's a relaxed air about him. His beard is a little too long, his hair slicked back from his face. Good morning, Jester. How are you doing today? Mentally, physically, or emotionally? All three, I suppose. On a scale of 1 through 10, 3, 10, 3. Well, it's a good thing you're here then. What would you say if I told you those threes were on the high side for me? I'd say it sounds like we need to consider weekly therapy for you. Well, then scratch that from the record. The doctor chuckles. Will do. Anyway, let's get started. Can you describe your mental state after the last mission? Jester whistles low. It was a doozy. I hate seeing fellow Umbral employees suffering. I didn't much care for Esme Sylvain in the first place. I would have left her in that cave had it been my call, but I came out of it feeling pretty positive. My Hail Mary explosion was a real stroke of genius. You're confident. Too confident, do you think? Nah. I know all the shrinks always say I use it as a shield or a way to deflect from the more serious shit about my job, but that's not true. It just helps me rise above it instead of getting pulled down into the muck, you know what I mean? And you get results, so that's a genuine reason to be confident. Jester points at the doctor behind the camera. Exactly. You get it. I'm going to shift gears here. Let's talk about Raptor. Jester's Posture stiffens. Shoulders going square. Ah. There it is. What? The real reason for this mandatory evaluation. I was wondering when you'd bring him up, honestly. I'm just glad he didn't bury the lead for too long. He spreads his hands out in front of him. Let's get this over with. Do you feel his loss is being improperly addressed? Jester scratches at his beard, but his face and voice are serious. Yeah. I won't sugarcoat it for the suits farther up the chain. They crammed us all in a conference room and just told us he was dead. It was a shit show, and it could have been avoided if they had told us individually. Then it was like they were just watching and waiting for us to be ready to work again. It was the same with Cypher. I know how this works with Umbral. No funeral, no service, just a 10-inch stone in a field behind the armory with a fucking number on it because our names are still classified even when we're corpses. Jester leans forward, his feet planted on the ground, the back legs of the chair rising. And none of us are morons, Doc. We know there's not a single damn thing under those stones. So yeah, I think it was improperly addressed. But that's how it's always been. The less time we spend thinking about our own mortality, the better, right? Those are all very valid points. But despite all of that, do you think the team is handling it effectively? Raptor's death, I mean. As well as we can, I guess. At least on the field. Even Aegis? She went before me, eh? She's handling it to the best of her personal ability, but we should probably be judging her on a totally different damn scale. Aegis continues to patch up this team with her bare hands and less than optimal resources. And she's had 2 of us die pretty much in her arms. Umbral shoved a healer into a killer-shaped hole and acts surprised when she's shaky as hell sometimes. And I don't care what they think about me saying that, because they did it on purpose. Their methods are none of my concern until they land on my team. Do you feel responsible for her? Hell yes, I do. If one piece goes off center, the whole construct shakes. And right now, Aegis is off center. What about your own role in the team dynamic? I might be the only fully sane one, and I'm only half kidding. You're being considered for a leadership position, possibly even a promotion. What are your thoughts? Jester sighs, but the anger that laced his voice dissipates. I question the judgment of whoever makes those decisions, but as we've already established, my confidence knows no bounds. I'll be damn good at the job, but I can't quite figure out why Hawkeye wasn't tapped for the position instead. He could shoot a satellite out of orbit if he wanted to, and he came up in the corporation. I was plucked out of the civilian world. Hawkeye is obviously the Eclipse Initiative's darling, so why me? I can't give you any answers on that front. That's completely out of my department. Yeah, I know. It's just good to say it out loud. The only person I talked to about this was Raptor, and now that he's gone, there isn't really anyone on the team that I can commiserate with. What about Tempest? None of the rest of the team has mentioned her thus far. She seems relatively unproblematic. Oh man, you really should have brought her up to Hawkeye. But nah, I see myself in her, especially when I was younger and had a chip on my shoulder about authority. If she sees me questioning Umbral's decisions, then she's going to be more likely to do the same. I like the kid. I want to keep her around, even if I had a bunch of extra responsibilities shoved on my plate. Would the added responsibility change how you engage with the team? You know, that's one of the things I'm afraid of. Sentinel is nearly perfect as far as Eclipse leaders go. He's the archetype. But I get the feeling that if the higher-ups could change one thing about the boss, they'd burn that little bit of empathy that he still has out of him. I don't want to lose perspective of who my team is to me. So you fear becoming too much like the Eclipse Initiative heads? Yeah. and I'm afraid of not noticing if I do. But that's also why I'm taking the promotion if it's offered to me. I'm self-aware. I still fear. If I don't accept, who knows what monsters will? Do you feel loyal to Umbral, Jester? Believe it or not, yeah, I do. I'm critical, sure, but that doesn't supersede my loyalty. Interesting. Would you walk away if given the option? No. I'm established. There's no way in hell I'd want to start over. You enjoy your job then? I enjoy demolitions. The rest depends on the day. Fair enough. Last question. What do you fear the most, Jester? Becoming predictable. Once that happens, I'm worthless. Worthless to whom? Everyone, Doc. What do you... You said that was the last question. I'm holding you to it. Okay, that's it then. You're dismissed, Jester.
The subject shows a deflective sense of humor and a strategic way of masking deeper emotional struggles. They express notable concern about Aegis and overall team morale while still indicating strong readiness for leadership despite some doubts. Jester is introspective and emotionally intelligent, but works to appear more aloof than he really is. He fears change in his perspective if assigned a new role. I recommend continued mentorship under Sentinel if promotion proceeds. The subject is approved for ongoing deployment and is eligible for promotion review. Observe how he responds to added responsibilities if given a leadership position, as some behavioral adjustments and temporary resistance may occur. Clearance granted. Subject: Private Hari Pak, Tempest.
Tempest sits relaxed, one arm slung over the back of the chair. Her posture is casual but alert. She's chewing gum despite a healing gash that is visible along her jawline. She doesn't appear to notice it. Tempest is in her uniform, sleeves pushed up, one foot tapping on the floor as if to burn off excess energy. Tempest, thank you for coming this evening. From what I understand, you aren't overly fond of these evaluations. She waves her hand dismissively. Her nails are painted black, wildly against uniform protocol. I just have a bad history with asshole doctors of all sorts. No offense to you. Dr. Halverson laughs. None taken. Let's begin with something simple. How would you describe your mental and emotional state after the last mission? Fine. Work is work. You're Ares' close quarters combat specialist. Was it more difficult than usual to fight and ultimately kill other Umbral employees? I'd never met any of those people in my life. Most of them were so messed up I wouldn't have recognized them anyway. So no, it didn't matter much to me. I was to understand there was some overlap in personnel between the medical and science divisions. And you spend more time than the rest of your team on the medical floor, right? Because of your Moya Moya disease, I mean. Tempest shrugs, a shadow passing over her expression. You mean I spend more time as a science experiment, right? Like I said, I didn't recognize anyone I killed on the Sylvain mission. Not that I was trying to recognize anyone, but still. There were a few I wouldn't have minded getting my hands on anyway. You know, you aren't a science experiment to Umbral. Everything in your file indicates that your treatments are necessary to manage your disease and its side effects. The inability to feel pain can be deadly in some circumstances, and with how risky your line of work is, it's imperative you continue whatever treatments your physicians describe. Yeah, obviously. She's annoyed, but it's a conversation she's had time and time again. You aren't going to convince me to enjoy it, so let's move on. That's fine. Are you having any reoccurring dreams or nightmares about your most recent deployment or past deployments? Tempest shrugs. Sometimes. Who doesn't? We see some real shit out there. There isn't any one dream that I have more than others. There are some repeats, but not like forever. The worst one was right after Viridian. I had that one maybe 10 times. Otherwise, most of my dreams are about my childhood. Would you care to elaborate? Not really. I'm sure you have it all written out there in your file. It's about my sister mostly. Everyone says twins have this special connection, but ours got all fucked up when we were separated. So I think the dreams are the most I'm going to get. That's a very open and honest answer. I'm surprised. The rest of your team wasn't so forthcoming about this question. Why do you think that is? Maybe they're in denial. Maybe they don't dream. How the hell should I know? You aren't close with anyone on your team? No. Aegis a little, but my only real friend is dead. You're talking about Cypher. Tempest leans forward slightly. Cypher was my day one. We came up together, and now I'm just supposed to pretend he was never there. So I don't bother making friends anymore. Does Cypher's absence affect your ability to work with the rest of Ares? Not anymore. But it did before? Yes, and I'm not going to elaborate. It's done. We've got a nice, fresh grave to mourn at now, so Cypher's just old news. His death was more affecting than Raptor's then, at least for you. Tempest checks her fingernails, picking at a fleck of black paint. Raptor was never the same after Svalbard, and I wasn't exactly his favorite even when he was himself. Do you feel isolated, Tempest? Sure, but there's nothing deep about it. I'm the lowest ranking team member, but I've been around too long to actually be a rookie anymore. It sucks, but it's also not expected. What about your relationship with Hawkeye? She laughs sharply. He's a prick. I don't like him. Again, there's nothing deeper to it, but keep digging if you want. No. I don't want to, Tempest. I've been at this all day, so let's get this done. If you had the chance to walk away from this and go back to civilian life, would you? Tempest is quiet for a few beats, and her voice is surprisingly soft when she speaks again. I want to say yes. I want to say I'd take a quiet life, work some normal job, maybe call Gia, and pretend I know how to be a sister again. But the truth? I don't think I could leave. This job, this team, it's all I've got. Umbral made sure of that. So, do you feel loyalty towards Umbral? Look, I hate a lot of the parts of the Eclipse initiative, but Umbral saved my life and saved my sister, and that's worth some loyalty. Thank you, Tempest. You can go now. Tempest stands, gives a 2-fingered salute, and leaves just before the recording cuts off.
Tempest shows unresolved grief hidden behind bravado, but ultimately it hasn't affected her job performance. Her emotional suppression is clear, but subtle signs reveal instability. She feels disillusioned with Umbral, yet remains tied to it. She's young, and lacks a strong sense of identity outside the initiative. Continued observation is recommended, focusing especially on intra-team conflicts. There might be value in encouraging one of the senior team members to take her under their wing. Tempest has the potential to be an invaluable asset within the Eclipse initiative, but the underlying resentment has to be burned out of her. Clearance granted.
24 hours after recovery from Crater Station. Far below where the flesh and blood members of Ares were sleeping, eating, recovering, and dying, all the remaining pieces of EXO-001 were scattered on a long metal platform inside the Umbral Robotic Engineer Lab. The overhead lights were painfully bright, the temperature of the lab low to keep the intricate computer systems running optimally. The pieces of Exo were filthy, covered in dust, grime, and not a small amount of blood. But its head had been cleaned off enough to hook up to the mainframe with a series of colored wires. Lights flickered within, stars in the black sky of its endless, dark faceplate. The lab had been cleared of interns and first years, leaving only 2 of the highest-ranking engineers to work on the combat unit. Exo was the prototype, and they'd activated 2 other units to different teams since Exo had proven useful. But the head of Team Ares had insisted they wanted to keep the same unit on their team, if at all possible, even if it meant repairing the unit from the ground up. "At least the torso is salvageable," the first engineer said, sighing as he lowered himself into the chair next to his coworker. "And the head, that's the important stuff. Everything else is just machinery." "I'm well aware." The second older engineer didn't bother looking up from the computer screen in front of him. "I still can't believe they hauled this thing out of the underground station." "You know how people get," the first engineer said, pulling up the schematics of Exo on his own screen, spinning the model with a flick of his finger. "Humans bond with the weirdest things. I still think we could have avoided all the emotional baggage that these things seem to inspire in these soldiers if they weren't human-shaped. Maybe on 4 legs. A dog shape would be even worse. All it takes is one mercenary to look at it in the middle of a firefight. Remember the Labrador they had when they were 9 years old, and boom, they let the rest of the team eat lead to save the robot." "Yeah, I guess." They worked quietly for some time, sending off instructions for which new parts needed to be manufactured and which ones would be repaired, slowly working through the impossibly detailed artificial intelligence as they went. "Hey, did Ambrov and Kinematics do any work on this project?" The second engineer turned in his chair. "Hell if I know. Why?" The younger engineer leaned forward, squinting at his monitor. "Some of these subroutine notes are in Cyrillic, but it's like Soviet-era syntax. Who in the hell still writes like this?" The older engineer rolled over in his chair, adjusting his glasses to better peer at the display. "Let me see." After a few moments, he hummed, scratching at the back of his head. "It's not Ambrov. He's not that much older than me. And if I remember right, he went to university here in the States." "Huh. Maybe some intern took a shortcut and used an old open-source patch?" "No." The second engineer rolled his chair closer, scrolling through the code on the screen. He briefly paused at one comment, which read, "Keep output 0. Limit overload values." Before moving on. "Look closer." He highlighted the portion of the code. Everything looked normal on the surface, like standard operational functions, decision-making trees that outlined Exo's priorities. It wasn't that much different than the priorities given to the human members of its team. Mission completion above all else, followed by unit survival, and finally, self-preservation. Except parts of the tree had been subtly inverted. "It's clever," the first engineer mused. "Whoever did this buried it so deep that it won't show up in a normal compile. Scarily clever." They dug deeper. Every conditional tied to Ares team member status had been given invisible multipliers, values hidden in unused memory that only triggered during live mission operations. The effect was simple, yet staggering in its implications. Exo would always choose the path that preserved the lives of the Ares team members, even if it risked the mission or itself in the process. Even more concerning, the execution logs were falsified. The mission data sent back to Umbral would always read as though every choice Exo made was for mission efficiency. To anyone without direct access to the combat robot's raw data, Exo would appear to be functioning perfectly. "It could just be a glitch," the first engineer added half-heartedly. "No." The second engineer shook his head. We can both see this isn't random. Some of this architecture is stuff I haven't seen in 30-some years, for one. The changes, the comments, how well it's all buried. It's deliberate. The quiet between them was heavy and vast. On the platform in the center of the room, the lights within Exo's head continued to flicker. The younger engineer had the oddest sensation that the robot was listening to them, and he shivered. It had nothing to do with the cold. Finally, he spoke. Should we flag this? The older engineer was watching Exo, too, staring at the dark faceplate. Let's just get it working first. Then we'll go from there.